Peter Biello never thought that a $1 bill would bring him to tears, but then again, ever since his wife died, things have been a lot different. He lost his life partner, his friend. When he noticed a handwritten note in blue ink on an ordinary $1 bill, he burst out crying. He knew he wanted to keep it forever, as it was one of the last things she would ever write to him. Now, Peter wasn't one to believe in the universe sending signals, nor did he really believe in signs from above. However, at this moment, with the evidence staring him right in the face, he didn't know what to believe. All he knew was his grace was with him once again. He started to reminisce on the long and happy life they had spent together and started to remember how fate had brought them together in the first place. Their story goes back all the way to 1964, when Peter went to visit his mother in childhood home in Italy. As most mothers do, almost immediately she started hounding Peter about why he was still single. She wanted to see her son with a loving partner, and of course, she wanted grandchildren. Peter was 35 years old and his mother was on the hunt for a wife for him. She already had something in mind for Peter, but he wasn't having it. He tried to ignore her constant insisting, but he had no luck. She was determined. To humor his mother, he decided to go on the date. To his surprise, it went extraordinarily well. Grace Caruso was the perfect woman for Peter, and Peter was the perfect man for Grace. It was love at first sight when these two met, and quickly they decided to make it official. A month later, they got married. The couple was inseparable for most of their lives. They moved to Connecticut and decided they wanted to start a family rather quickly. Wherever my wife would go, I would go, Peter shared with WTNH News 8. They shared a wonderful life together, which was why he was so devastated when she passed. The couple had 2 kids together. She was a very good wife, very good cook, very good mother, Peter told the news station. They even welcomed 4 grandchildren, growing their family and their love. Life couldn't be any better for them until tragedy struck. Although Grace was much younger than Peter, tragedy would strike her first. She began feeling ill in 2001 and decided to go see a doctor. Her doctor gave her the worst news of her life. She had cancer. Peter comforted his wife, but in reality, he was terrified. She began a rigorous course of treatments, including chemo, radiation, and surgeries. For all of it, Peter was there, loving her to the fullest. Grace was a fighter, and she was determined to live. Although having cancer is terrifying and prognosis can often be grim, she wasn't going to let it bring her down. All the good energy seemed to pay off. By the grace of God, Grace's cancer went into remission. The family was delighted beyond belief and felt very blessed. Years later, Peter commented on how he felt during that time. I thought it was going to be okay. Unfortunately, only 3 years later, Grace's cancer returned. As Grace underwent more treatment, Peter never left her side. She goes to chemo. I sit down next to her. And coming home, she lay down on the couch. She's very sick after the chemo, and I do all the work in the house, he said. Grace fought hard for her years fighting her cancer, and Peter wanted to remind her that he was devoted to her forever. Peter thought a great way to always have a piece of each other was for each of them to sign a dollar bill. They would then keep the bills in their wallets so they could always be close. Peter knew he would keep this small but heartfelt keepsake forever, but just like their time together, they would end up separated. Although Peter meant to keep the bills forever, he accidentally spent them, and when he realized, he was in shock. So disappointed at the accident, sadness came over him. He thought that he would never see the bills again, and he had to accept that. However, little did Peter know, the universe had his back. About 5 years later, after the bills were lost, Grace and Peter were able to celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary. They were ecstatic that they could make it to this milestone. But unfortunately, only a few months later, Grace passed away. Peter was beyond devastated when Grace died, and he found himself all alone. He didn't believe in the afterlife per se, as there was no evidence to prove it. But at this moment, he was hoping for anything to know his sweet Grace was okay. Peter spent more and more time with his family as he needed to be surrounded by the love to get through this terribly hard time. When he took his granddaughter Ashley to Subway, he gave her a $10 bill so she could pay for her sandwiches. When he got the change back, he was in shock. Looking down at the change in his hand, he realized he had just gotten the most important dollar he's ever had. It was the bill that Grace signed, the one that he lost so many years ago. He started to tear up as he realized the significance of what had just occurred. He couldn't help but think that Grace was looking down on him and smiling. He showed the bill to Ashley, and she couldn't believe it either. It was a miracle, and they both felt it. We started to cry. We were so happy to get the dollar back. I never thought I'd get that dollar back. It's a miracle to get it back after 5 years, Peter shared. Who knows how many million people got that dollar in their hands, he expressed. He was beaming with joy at this sign from above. Peter immediately wanted to go visit Grace's grave and show her what he had just found. As soon as he got there, he said, "I showed the dollar to my wife and said, 'Grace, look, I got your dollar back.'" Although life has been extremely difficult for Peter without Grace, small moments like this remind him that she is still around, just in a different way. Did you like the story? Check out our channel for more.